Embarrassed single dad leaves. Lavish Gala. Billionaire Hostess says 3 words that change everything. They call me the Ice Queen of Manhattan. It's a nickname printed in the glossy pages of business magazines and whispered in the elevators of my own skyscraper. My name is Isabella Sterling, CEO of Sterling Global, and my net worth is a number that looks like a phone code for a small country. I have everything. I have a penthouse overlooking Central Park that costs more than most people earn in 10 lifetimes. I have a fleet of cars I rarely drive. I have a closet full of designer clothes that arrive before they even hit the runway. But as I stood on the balcony of the Grand Metropolitan Hotel, looking down at the sea of faces in the ballroom below, I realized the one thing I didn't have was a reason to be there. Tonight was my gala, the Sterling Foundation annual charity ball. Tickets started at $10,000 a plate. The room was filled with senators, tech moguls, heiresses, and people who were famous simply for being famous. They were drinking my champagne, eating my caviar, and laughing at jokes that weren't funny just because a rich person told them. It was a perfect, glittering ecosystem of hypocrisy, and I was the center of it all. I took a sip of sparkling water. I never drank at these things. Control was my currency. And checked my watch. 9:15 p.m. I had to make my speech in 45 minutes. 45 minutes of smiling until my face hurt, shaking hands with men who only made eye contact with my chest or my bank account, and pretending that this room full of sharks actually cared about the children's hospital we were raising money for. Isabella, darling, a voice cut through my thoughts. It was Marcus, my chief of operations, looking flushed and holding a glass of scotch. The senator is asking for you. He wants to discuss that zoning permit for the new headquarters. Tell him I'm in the powder room, I said without turning around. Or tell him, I've ascended to a higher plane of existence. Just keep him away from me for 10 minutes, Marcus. Marcus chuckled nervously. You're the hostess, Isabella. You can't hide at your own party. Watch me. I turned away from the balcony and started to weave through the crowd, looking for a quiet corner. I moved through the room like a ghost. People parted for me, their eyes lighting up with that hungry, desperate look I knew so well. Ms. Sterling, wonderful evening. Isabella, you look stunning. Ms. Sterling, do you have a moment to talk about my startup? I nodded. I smiled. I kept moving. I was suffocating. The air in the room felt thin, recycled through too many expensive lungs. I reached the edge of the ballroom, near the service exits, where the shadows were deeper and the diamonds sparkled a little less. I leaned against a pillar, closing my eyes for a second, just trying to breathe. That's when I saw him. He was standing near the coat check, almost hidden behind a large floral arrangement of white lilies. He didn't look like anyone else in the room. For starters, his tuxedo didn't fit. The shoulders were too tight, the sleeves a fraction too short, and the fabric had that slight sheen that screamed rental. He wasn't wearing a Patek Philippe or a Rolex. His wrist was bare except for a tan line where a watch used to be. But it wasn't his clothes that caught my attention. It was his face. He looked terrified. Not the social anxiety of a wealthy introvert, but a deep, visceral discomfort. He was holding a glass of water like it was a lifeline, his knuckles white. He kept checking his phone, tapping the screen to illuminate it, then shoving it back into his pocket. I watched him. In a room full of peacocks strutting around trying to be seen, he was the only one trying to disappear. Then, his phone lit up again. He pulled it out, and I saw his face soften. The terror vanished, replaced by a look of such pure, unadulterated love that it felt like an intrusion just to witness it. He smiled at the screen, typed a quick reply, and then the worry came crashing back. He looked at the exit, then back at the crowd, torn. I was intrigued. I shouldn't have been. I had a speech to prep, a senator to avoid, and $1 million reputation to uphold. But I found myself pushing off the pillar and moving toward him. As I got closer, I could hear him muttering to himself, "Just 20 more minutes. You promised. Just 20 minutes." He ran a hand through his hair, which was thick and dark and looked like he had cut it himself. He looked exhausted. There were dark circles under his eyes that no amount of concealer could hide. He looked like a man who was carrying the weight of the world on shoulders that were barely holding up. A waiter walked by with a tray of appetizers. The man flinched, stepping back to avoid being hit, and bumped into a tall, blonde woman wearing a red dress that cost more than a car. "Watch it!" the woman snapped, turning around. Wine sloshed from her glass, missing her dress by an inch. "Do you have any idea how much this costs, clumsy idiot?" The man went pale. I'm so sorry, ma'am. I didn't see you. I can get you a napkin?" "Save it," she sneered, looking him up and down with open disdain. "Just stay away from me." God, they let anyone in here these days. She stormed off. The man stood there, frozen, his shoulders slumped. He looked around to see if anyone else had noticed, his face burning with a humiliation so raw it made my own chest ache. He placed his glass of water on a nearby table with a trembling hand. He was done. I could see it in his posture. The fight had gone out of him. He turned toward the exit, head down, defeated. He was leaving, and for some reason I couldn't explain. The thought of him walking out that door, thinking he didn't belong in my world, made me furious. Not at him, at the woman in the red dress, at the rental tuxedo, at the universe that made a man with kind eyes feel like garbage. Wait, I said. My voice wasn't loud, but I was used to being heard. He stopped. He didn't turn around immediately. He took a deep breath, like he was bracing himself for another insult, another rich person telling him he was in the way. He turned slowly. When his eyes met mine, I stopped breathing for a second. They were hazel, flecked with green, and they were the most honest eyes I had ever seen. I'm sorry, he said quickly, backing away. I was just leaving. I won't cause any more trouble. He didn't know who I was. That was the second shock of the night. Everyone knew Isabella Sterling. My face was on the banner hanging above the stage, but he looked at me like I was just another guest, another potential threat. You're not causing trouble, I said, stepping closer. I saw him glance at my dress, a custom silver silk gown, and then look down at his scuffed shoes. I saw what happened. She was rude. You didn't do anything wrong. He let out a dry, humorless laugh. I exist in her space. That's wrong enough tonight. It's not her space, I corrected him. It's mine. He looked confused. Yours? I'm Isabella Sterling, I said, extending my hand. This is my party, and I didn't give you permission to leave yet. He stared at my hand. Then he looked at my face. Recognition finally dawned on him, followed immediately by panic. Ms. Sterling, he stammered. He didn't take my hand. He wiped his palm on his pants first, as if he was afraid of dirtying me. Then he shook it. His grip was firm, his skin rough. Working hands. I'm Leo. Leo Davis. I really shouldn't be here. Why not, Leo? I asked, not letting go of his hand. You have a ticket, don't you? Technically, he said, pulling his hand back gently. My boss gave it to me. He couldn't make it. He said it would be a good opportunity to network, to maybe find some clients for the shop. The shop. I'm a mechanic, he said, the words coming out like a confession. I fix cars. I don't belong here, Ms. Sterling. Look at me. I'm wearing a suit that smells like someone else's cologne, and I just almost ruined a dress that costs more than I make in a year. Money doesn't determine worth, Leo, I said, reciting the line my PR team loved to put in my speeches. Leo looked at me with a sad smile. With all due respect, ma'am, people with money are the only ones who say that. Down here, money determines everything. It determines where you live, what you eat, and… He stopped, his eyes darting back to his phone. And what? I pressed. And whether you can save the people you love, he whispered. The air between us shifted. The noise of the party faded into a dull buzz. I looked at this man, this stranger in an ill-fitting suit, and I saw a desperation I recognized. It wasn't the desperation of climbing the corporate ladder. It was the desperation of survival. Is that why you're here? I asked softly. To save someone? He looked away, his jaw tightening. I thought maybe… I don't know what I thought. It was stupid. I thought if I met the right person, if I could just get a contract for the fleet repairs, or… It doesn't matter. It was a mistake. I have to go. Leo, I stepped in front of him, blocking his path to the door. Why were you checking your phone? He froze. It's nothing. It's not nothing. You smiled. It was the only time you looked happy all night. Who is it? He hesitated. He looked at the door, then at me. He looked like a man on the edge of a cliff. My daughter, he said, his voice cracking. Maya. She's 6. Is she okay? No, he said, and the word hung heavy in the air. She's not. She's at home with a neighbor right now because I can't afford a babysitter. She has a fever. Again. And I'm here, pretending to be someone I'm not. Drinking free water because I can't afford the juice, hoping a miracle falls into my lap. He took a step back. I'm sorry. I shouldn't be unloading this on you. You're Isabella Sterling. You have important things to do. Nothing is more important than this, I said, surprising myself. I have to go to her, he said, desperation creeping back into his voice. I promised I'd be home by 10 to read her a story. I've wasted enough time. He moved to step around me. He was really leaving. He was going to walk out that door, back to his struggling life, back to his sick daughter, and I would stay here in my tower of ivory and champagne. I couldn't let him go. I didn't know why, but I knew with absolute certainty that if Leo Davis walked out of my life right now, I would regret it forever. It wasn't charity. It wasn't pity. It was magnetism. Leo, stop, I said. He paused, his hand on the brass handle of the door. He looked back at me, his eyes tired and sad. Goodbye, Mrs. Sterling. It was an honor to meet you. He pushed the door open. The cold night air rushed in. I had 3 seconds. 3 seconds to make a choice. I could be the CEO. I could be the hostess. Or I could be a human being. I'm coming with you, I said. Leo froze. He turned around slowly, looking at me like I had grown a second head. What? I said, I'm coming with you. Coming with me where? To see Maya, I said. You said you promised to read her a story. Well, I'm giving you a ride. My car is faster than whatever way you were planning to get home. Ms. Sterling, he said, shaking his head. You can't leave. This is your gala. There are senators inside. There are cameras. I looked back at the ballroom. I saw the fake smiles. I saw the sharks circling. I saw a world I had conquered but never truly lived in. Then I looked at Leo, a mechanic in a rented suit who just wanted to read a bedtime story to his sick little girl. Let them wait, I said. I reached out and grabbed his hand. It was rough, warm, and real. Come on, Leo. Let's get out of here. And before he could argue, before I could second-guess myself, I pulled the embarrassed single dad through the service door and into the night. I didn't know it then, but those 3 words, I'm coming with you, were about to cost me a fortune, ruin my reputation, and save my life. The heavy metal door clicked shut behind us, cutting off the hum of the gala like a guillotine. The silence of the loading dock was startling. It smelled of exhaust fumes and cold concrete, a sharp contrast to the perfume and lilies inside. Leo stopped dead, pulling his hand from mine. He looked at me with wide, panicked eyes, his chest heaving. Miss Sterling, he breathed, backing away until he hit a stack of crates. You can't do this. You can't just leave. They'll be looking for you. The senator, the press. Let them look, I said, smoothing down the front of my silk gown. It felt ridiculous out here, shimmering against the grime of the loading dock. I have a team of highly paid publicists. Their job is to spin narratives. Let them earn their salaries tonight. But, Leo, I interrupted, stepping closer. Is your car here? He looked down at his shoes. I took the bus. The tuxedo rental place is across town, and the connection, it took longer than I thought. That's why I was checking the time. If I miss the 10:15, I don't get home until midnight. The bus, I repeated, feeling a prick of shame. I hadn't taken a bus since I was in boarding school on a field trip. Well, you're not taking the bus tonight. I pulled out my phone and dialed Marcus. He picked up on the first ring. Isabella, where are you? The senator is asking if you've fallen into a toilet. Bring the car around to the service entrance, I said, ignoring his question. The loading dock on 5th. Now. The service entrance? Isabella, are you? Now, Marcus. I hung up. Leo was staring at me like I was an alien species he had only read about in textbooks. You're serious, he whispered. You're actually leaving your own gala to drive a mechanic to the Bronx. The Bronx? I raised an eyebrow. Is that where we're going? He nodded slowly. South Bronx. It's not a place for a car like yours, Ms. Sterling. It's a car, Leo. It has wheels. It goes where I tell it to go. 2 minutes later, the sleek black Maybach rolled silently into the loading dock, its headlights cutting through the gloom. Marcus jumped out of the driver's seat, looking frantic. When he saw me standing next to a man in an ill-fitting tuxedo, surrounded by garbage dumpsters, his jaw actually dropped. Isabella, he hissed, rushing over. What is going on? Who is this? This is Leo, I said calmly. Leo, this is Marcus, my chief of operations and occasional babysitter. Marcus, give me the keys. You're driving? Marcus looked horrified. In that dress? I'm driving, I confirmed, holding out my hand. You stay here. Handle the gala. Tell them I had a family emergency. Tell them I'm indisposed. Tell them whatever you want. Just keep the checkbook open for the donation. Isabella, you can't. Keys, Marcus sighed. The defeat of a man who knew he had lost, and dropped the fob into my hand. If you scratch it, I'm resigning. Get in, I told Leo. He hesitated for a long second, looking at the car like it was a spaceship. Then he looked at me. My daughter, he murmured. I have to get to Maya. That was the deciding factor. Not my authority, not the luxury car, but the promise of getting to his child faster. He opened the passenger door and slid in. I got in the driver's seat, the leather creaking softly under my gown. I tossed my heels into the back seat. Driving barefoot was a habit I'd never broken, and pushed the start button. The engine purred to life, a beast waking up. We drove out of the loading dock and into the city night. The drive started in silence. Leo sat stiffly, his hands folded in his lap, terrified to touch anything. He stared out the window as we navigated the traffic of Midtown, the lights of the skyscrapers reflecting in his eyes. "So," I said, trying to break the tension. "Tell me about Maya." He blinked, turning to face me. "Maya? She's everything. She's smart. Too smart for her own good. She likes to take things apart to see how they work. Toasters, remotes, my watch. Like her father." I smiled, merging onto the highway. "Yeah," he chuckled softly, a sound that seemed to relax his shoulders a fraction. "Like her father. But she's sick, Ms. Sterling. It's not just a cold. It's complicated." "Call me Isabella," I said. "Please. Ms. Sterling makes me feel like my mother." "Isabella," he tested the name. "Maya has an immune deficiency. It means a simple fever can turn into a hospital stay overnight. The doctors say she needs a specialized treatment, immune globulin therapy, but my insurance covers the basics, not the specialist, not the experimental stuff." I gripped the steering wheel tighter. "How much is it?" "The treatment?" He looked out the window again. 18,000 for, the first round, then 5,000 a month. I did the math in my head. I spent more than that on catering for a Tuesday lunch meeting. The disparity made me feel physically ill. "And tonight?" I asked. "You said you were hoping for a miracle." "My boss told me about the gala," he admitted. "He said wealthy people feel generous when they've had a few drinks. He said if I could just meet one person, maybe a doctor, maybe an investor, maybe I could make a deal. Fix their cars for a year. 2 years. Whatever it took." "But you didn't talk to anyone." "I tried," he said, his voice quiet. "I walked up to 3 different groups. One man asked me to get him a refill. Another asked who let the staff out of the kitchen. And the third, well, you saw the lady in the red dress. People are idiots," I muttered, pressing down on the accelerator. The Maybach surged forward. "They're not idiots," Leo said, surprisingly gentle. "They're just up there, and I'm down here. It's hard to see the ground when you're living in the clouds, Isabella." I glanced at him. He wasn't bitter. He was just tired, resigned, and that hurt more than anger would have. We crossed the bridge into the Bronx. The scenery changed. The glass towers were replaced by brick walk-ups and neon signs for pawn shops and bodegas. The roads got rougher. I could feel every pothole, even with the Maybach's suspension. "Turn left here," Leo instructed, pointing a calloused finger. "Then the second right. It's the building with the blue door." I pulled up to the curb. The building was old, the brick crumbling in places. A group of teenagers sat on the stoop, watching us with suspicious eyes as the luxury car rolled to a stop. "You should stay in the car," Leo said quickly, unbuckling his seatbelt. "Lock the doors. I'll run up, check on Maya, and thank you for the ride. You saved me an hour." "I'm coming up," I said, turning off the engine. "Isabella, no," he said firmly. "This isn't... Look, my apartment is on the 4th floor. There's no elevator. The hallway smells like cabbage and bleach. It's not a place for you." "I like cabbage," I lied, "and I want to meet the girl who takes apart toasters." I opened my door before he could stop me. I stepped out onto the sidewalk, the cold biting at my bare arms. I grabbed my heels from the back seat, slipped them on, and locked the car. "Isabella," Leo pleaded, coming around the side. "Please, you've done enough." "I haven't done anything yet," I said. "Lead the way, Leo." He looked at me, then at the building, then back at me. He realized I wasn't going to budge. With a heavy sigh, he turned and walked toward the entrance. The teenagers whistled as we passed. "Nice ride, man. You win the lottery?" one of them called out. "Something like that," Leo muttered, keeping his head down. The stairs were steep. My designer heels clicked loudly on the worn linoleum. By the 3rd flight, I was breathing hard, but I refused to show it. Leo took the steps 2 at a time, his anxiety propelling him upward. We reached the 4th floor. Leo fumbled with his keys, his hands shaking slightly. He unlocked door 4B and pushed it open. "Mrs. Higgins?" he called out softly. The apartment was small, tiny. You could fit the whole thing inside my master bathroom, but it was impeccably clean. The floors were scrubbed, the walls were painted a cheerful yellow that was starting to peel in the corners. There were books everywhere, stacked on the floor, on the mismatched chairs, on the radiator. An elderly woman with gray hair and curlers sat on a floral sofa, knitting. She looked up, her eyes widening when she saw me standing behind Leo in a shimmering silver gown. "Lord have mercy," she whispered. "Leo, did you rob a bank?" "No, Mrs. Higgins," Leo said, rushing past her. "How is she?" "She's burning up, honey," the woman said, her voice dropping. "I gave her the Tylenol like you said, but the fever keeps spiking. She's been asking for you." Leo dropped his keys on the table and ran down the short hallway to a bedroom door that was slightly ajar. I stood in the entryway, feeling larger than life and incredibly small at the same time. Mrs. Higgins stared at me. Are you a princess?" she asked, genuinely confused. "I'm a friend," I said, stepping inside and closing the door. "I gave Leo a ride." "A ride in what? A spaceship?" She gestured to my dress. "You look like you cost more than this building." "It's just a dress," I said, feeling foolish. "I'm going to check on them," Mrs. Higgins said, heaving herself off the sofa. You sit. Don't touch the radiator, it hisses." She shuffled down the hall. I was left alone in the living room. I looked around. A photo frame on the small TV stand caught my eye. It was Leo, younger, laughing, holding a baby. Beside him was a woman with kind eyes and dark hair. Maya's mother, I assumed. Where was she? I heard a low murmur of voices from the bedroom. Then, a small, weak cough. I walked slowly toward the hallway. I knew I was intruding. I knew I should leave, but my feet moved on their own. I stopped at the bedroom door. The room was lit by a nightlight shaped like a star. The walls were covered in drawings, blueprints of machines drawn in crayon. In the center was a small twin bed. Leo was kneeling beside it, still in his rental tuxedo, holding the hand of a small girl who looked far too small for the bed covers. "Daddy?" Her voice was a rasp, thin, and fragile. "I'm here, Peanut," Leo whispered, brushing damp hair off her forehead. "I'm right here. I'm sorry I was late." "Did you go to the ball?" she asked, her eyes fluttering open. They were glassy with fever. "Did you see the castle?" "I saw the castle," Leo said, his voice thick with emotion. "It was big and shiny." "Did you meet the prince?" Leo paused. He looked at his daughter, then he looked up and saw me standing in the doorway. "No," he said softly. "I didn't meet a prince, but I met a queen." Maya turned her head slowly. Her eyes landed on me. In the dim light, my silver dress caught the reflection of the star nightlight. "Hi," she whispered. I felt a lump form in my throat the size of a golf ball. I walked into the room. I didn't care about the dress. I didn't care about the germs. I knelt on the other side of the bed. "Hi, Maya," I said. "I'm Isabella." "You're sparkly," she breathed. "I am," I agreed. "Your dad tells me you like to fix things." She nodded weakly. "I fix the toaster, but it still burns the bread sometimes." "That's just character," I smiled. I reached out and touched her forehead. It was hot, burning hot, the kind of heat that radiated through your fingertips. This wasn't just a flu. This was a body fighting a war it was losing. I looked at Leo. He was watching me with a mixture of hope and terror. "She needs a doctor, Leo," I said quietly. "I know," he said, his voice breaking. "But if I take her to the ER now, without the specialist approval, they'll just stabilize her and send her home. We've done this 3 times this month. They patch the tire, but they don't fix the engine. What happens if she doesn't get the specialist?" Leo didn't answer. He just squeezed Maya's hand tighter, and a single tear tracked through the grime on his cheek. That tear broke me. I stood up. The room felt too small for the decision I had just made. "Pack a bag," I said. Leo looked up. "What?" "Pack a bag for her. And for you." "Isabella, I told you. I can't afford the—" "I'm not taking her to the ER," I interrupted. "I'm taking her to Mount Sinai, to the private wing, the one with my name on the building. Isabella, Dr. Eris Thorne is the head of immunology there," I said, my voice slipping into CEO mode. "He's the best in the country. He's going to meet us there in 30 minutes. You can't just call the head of immunology at midnight," Leo stammered. "I'm Isabella Sterling," I said, looking down at him. "I can do whatever the hell I want. Now pack the bag, Leo, or I'm carrying her out to the car wrapped in this blanket myself." Leo stared at me. For a moment, I thought he was going to argue. Pride is a stubborn thing, especially in men who have lost everything else. But then he looked at Maya, who was drifting back to sleep, her breathing shallow. He stood up. He walked over to me. He was close enough that I could smell the cheap cologne mixed with the sweat of a long, desperate night. "Why?" he whispered. "Why are you doing this?" "Because," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "Tonight, I was supposed to give a speech about helping children, and I realized I've never actually helped one. Not really." Not like this. He looked at me for a long heartbeat. Then he nodded. Okay, he said. Okay. He turned to the closet and started throwing clothes into a duffel bag. I walked back into the living room to make the call. Mrs. Higgins was watching me. You really a queen? She asked. I looked at the peeling paint, at the photo of the happy family that used to be, and at the closed bedroom door where a father was fighting for his daughter's life. No, I said, dialing the number. But I'm working on it. The drive to Mount Sinai was a blur of city lights and terrified silence. I drove the Maybach like I owned the road, which, considering the taxes I paid, I practically did. I wove through traffic on the FDR Drive, ignoring speed limits, my focus entirely on the rearview mirror, where Leo sat, cradling Maya in his arms. She was wrapped in a pink fleece blanket that had seen better days, her small face flushed and sweaty against his rented tuxedo. She was too quiet. That scared me more than the crying. She's burning up, Isabella, Leo whispered, his voice tight with panic. She's shaking. We're 5 minutes away, I said, gripping the leather steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Keep talking to her, Leo. Don't let her drift. Maya? Peanut? I heard him murmur. We're going to see the special doctor. Remember? The one who fixes engines. Like you, Daddy? Came a weak, thready voice. Better than me. Way better. I turned off the highway and cut across 3 lanes to make the exit for the hospital. Mount Sinai rose up like a fortress of glass and steel. Most people enter through the main emergency room, a chaotic holding pen of misery and fluorescent lights. I didn't. I drove straight past the ambulance-only signs and pulled up to the private entrance of the Sterling Pavilion. A security guard stepped out, hand raised to stop me. He saw a black Maybach speeding toward the VIP drop-off and looked ready to argue. I slammed the car into park and threw open the door. The night air hit my bare shoulders again, but I didn't feel the cold. I marched around the car just as the guard approached. Ma'am, you can't park here. This is for... He stopped. He looked at my face, then at the silver gown shimmering under the security lights, then back at my face. Ms. Sterling? He choked out. Open the doors, Miller, I barked, recognizing him from a board inspection 2 years ago. And call Dr. Thorne. Tell him I'm here with a code-red admission, pediatric, immune deficiency, high fever. Miller didn't hesitate. Yes, ma'am. He grabbed his radio and sprinted toward the glass doors. I opened the back door. Leo was frozen, looking at the sleek modern entrance that looked more like a hotel lobby than a hospital. Leo, give her to me, I said. I can walk, he said, trying to shift Maya's weight. You're shaking, I pointed out gently. Let me help. He looked at me, exhausted and terrified, and finally nodded. He carefully passed Maya into my arms. She was heavier than I expected, a dead weight of feverish heat. She smelled like lavender detergent and sickness. I held her close against my chest, ruining the silk of a $40,000 dress without a second thought, and walked into the building. The lobby was quiet. Tasteful art on the walls, marble floors. A team of nurses and a tall man in a white coat were already running toward us with a gurney. Isabella? The man in the coat stopped, breathless. It was Eris Thorne. He was brilliant, arrogant, and one of the few people I trusted with my life, or anyone else's. She's 6, I said, laying Maya gently onto the gurney. History of severe immune deficiency. Fever spiked 2 hours ago. She's lethargic, unresponsive to Tylenol. Eris switched instantly from friend to doctor. He shone a light in Maya's eyes, felt her glands, checked her pulse. Get her to Trauma 1, he ordered the nurses. Start an IV, broad-spectrum antibiotics, and get a CBC and culture stat. I want a cooling blanket. They started moving. Leo stood there, lost in the swirl of activity, his hands hanging uselessly by his sides. Who is the father? Aris asked, looking around. I am. Leo stepped forward, his voice trembling. Come with us, Aris said. I need her history. Now. They disappeared through the double doors. I was left standing in the lobby, my arms empty, my dress stained with sweat, my heart pounding a rhythm I didn't recognize. Ms. Sterling? A receptionist approached cautiously. Do you need a towel? I looked down at myself. I looked like a refugee from a fashion show gone wrong. I need coffee, I said. Black, and I need a phone charger. 20 minutes later, I was sitting in a private waiting room that looked more like a lounge in a first-class airport terminal. I had charged my phone. It had 47 missed calls, 30 from Marcus, 10 from the senator, 7 from my mother. I ignored them all. The door opened. Leo walked in. He looked broken. He had taken off the tuxedo jacket and rolled up the sleeves of his stained white shirt. He looked like he had aged 10 years in 10 minutes. He sank onto the leather sofa opposite me and put his head in his hand. "Leo?" I asked softly. He didn't look up. They stabilized. Her temperature is down to 101. Dr. Thorne says, he says if we had waited another hour, she might have gone into septic shock. I let out a breath I had been holding. "She's safe. For tonight," Leo said, lifting his head. His eyes were red. "He says she needs the treatment. The IV therapy. He wants to start it tomorrow morning." "Good. That's good." "Isabella," Leo said, his voice cracking. "Do you know how much that costs in a private room in the Sterling Pavilion? I saw the paperwork. They didn't ask me to sign it yet because Eris was rushing, but I saw the estimate on the screen. It's more money than I've ever seen." "Don't worry about it," I said, waving a hand. "Don't worry about it?" He laughed, a harsh, jagged sound. "That's easy for you to say. You own the building. I'm a mechanic, Isabella. I rent a tuxedo to try and impress people like you so I can beg for scraps. I can't pay for this. I didn't ask you to pay for it. I'm not a charity case," he snapped, standing up and pacing the small room. "I'm her father. It's my job to provide for her. It's my job to protect her. And tonight I had to rely on a stranger in a shiny dress to save her because I failed." "You didn't fail," I said, standing up to meet him. "You fought. You put on a suit you hated and walked into a room of vultures to try and save her. That's not failure, Leo. That's bravery." "It feels like failure," he whispered. "It feels like I'm drowning and you just pulled me onto a yacht I can't afford to be on." "Then let me be the life raft," I said fiercely. "Leo, look at me. I have spent my entire life accumulating wealth. I have so much money it's actually disgusting. I throw parties that cost $500,000 just to network. Do you think I care about the cost of a hospital room?" "I care," he shouted, "because it's my debt. It's my life. It's her life," I shouted back. Silence rang in the room. We stared at each other, breathing hard. The air was charged with something electric. Anger, fear, and something else. Respect. "It's her life," I repeated, softer this time. "And right now, that's the only thing that matters. We can argue about your pride later. We can argue about the bill later. But right now, she needs this treatment." Leo looked at me. The fight drained out of him, leaving him hollow. He slumped back onto the sofa. "You're right," he muttered. "God, you're right. I'm sorry." I sat down next to him, not opposite him, next to him. I was close enough to see the gray hairs starting to show in his dark stubble. "Tell me about her," I said. "When she's not sick, what is she like?" Leo smiled, a faint ghost of the expression I had seen at the gala. "She's bossy. She organizes her crayons by color spectrum. She thinks peanut butter is a food group, and she wants to be an astronaut because she says the Earth is too noisy." I smiled. "She sounds like me." "Yeah," Leo looked at me sideways. "She kind of does, although she has better manners than the lady in the red dress." I laughed. It felt good to laugh. "Everyone has better manners than the lady in the red dress. Her name is Clarissa, by the way, and I'm canceling her contract tomorrow morning." Leo looked shocked. "You can do that?" "I'm the CEO, Leo. I can do whatever I want." "Must be nice." "Sometimes," I admitted. "Sometimes it's lonely. Sometimes you find yourself leaving your own party to drive to the Bronx because you're desperate for something real." He looked at me, really looked at me, stripping away the CEO persona. "Is that why you came? Because you were bored?" "No," I said honestly. "Because I saw the way you looked at your phone when she texted you, and I realized I didn't have anyone looking at me like that." It was a vulnerable admission. Too vulnerable for a first date, if this was a date, which it definitely wasn't. It was a medical emergency with a side of class warfare. Just then, the door opened. A woman in a sharp gray suit walked in, holding a clipboard. It was the hospital administrator for the VIP wing. She looked like she had swallowed a lemon when she saw Leo's disheveled state. "Ms. Sterling," she said, ignoring Leo completely. "We need to process the admission paperwork for the patient in room 402. We need insurance cards, a credit card for the deposit, and..." Leo flinched, reaching for his wallet. I put a hand on his arm to stop him. "There's no need for that, Susan," I said coldly. "But Ms. Sterling, protocol dictates that you treat the patient," I interrupted. "The billing is already handled." "Handled?" Susan blinked. "By whom?" I stood up. I smoothed my dress. I put on the face that had stared down boardroom takeovers and hostile mergers. "By me," I said. "Put it on my personal account. The platinum file. And Susan?" "Yes, ma'am?" "Upgrade them to the presidential suite, the one with the view of the park, and make sure the cafeteria sends up peanut butter. The good kind. Susan looked terrified. Yes, Mrs. Sterling, right away. She scurried out. I turned back to Leo. He was staring at me with his mouth slightly open. The presidential suite? He asked weakly. Isabella, that's necessary, I said. She's an astronaut, remember? She needs a view of the sky. Leo stood up slowly. He looked at me, shaking his head. I don't know what to say, he whispered. Thank you doesn't seem like enough words. You don't have to say anything, I said. Just go be with her. Isabella, he took a step closer. You saved us tonight. I owe you everything. You owe me nothing, I said. Go. He nodded, wiped his eyes, and walked toward the door. But before he left, he turned back. You know, he said, for an ice queen, you're surprisingly warm. He left. I stood there in the quiet waiting room, my heart beating a little faster than usual. I checked my phone. One new message from Marcus. Gala is over. Everyone is asking where you went. I told them you were saving a puppy. The press is eating it up. Where are you really? I typed back. I'm exactly where I need to be. I sat back down on the leather sofa and closed my eyes. I was exhausted. I was wearing a ruined dress. I had just spent a small fortune on a stranger. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a fraud. I fell asleep right there in the waiting room, curled up under my own cashmere shawl that a nurse brought me. I woke up to sunlight streaming through the blinds and the smell of coffee. Real coffee. Leo was sitting in the chair opposite me, holding 2 cups. He looked better. He had shaved in the bathroom sink, and someone, probably a nurse, charmed by his sad eyes, had found him a clean t-shirt that said, Mount Sinai 5K run. Morning, he said softly, handing me a cup. Morning, I sat up, wincing as my stiff neck protested. What time is it? 8. Maya's awake. Her fever broke. That's amazing, I smiled, taking the coffee. How is she? She's asking for the sparkly lady, Leo grinned. She wants to know if you're a robot. I laughed. I'll take robot over princess. Isabella. Leo's face turned serious. We need to talk. About what happens next. Next? I can't just accept this, he said. The room. The doctor. It's too much. I have to pay you back. I calculated it. If I work double shifts for the next 5 years and I sell the truck, I might be able to… Leo, stop. No, I won't stop. I'm a man, Isabella. I pay my debts. I looked at him. I saw the pride that held him together when everything else was falling apart. I respected that pride. I couldn't just crush it with my wallet. I had to offer him something else. A transaction. Equals. Okay, I said slowly. You want to pay me back? Yes. Good. Because I have a proposition for you. A proposition? He looked wary. I have a fleet of cars, I said. 12 vintage classics, 4 armored SUVs, and 2 limousines. My current mechanic is charging me triple the market rate because he thinks I don't know the difference between a spark plug and a fuel injector. Leo's eyes narrowed. And I need someone I can trust, I said. Someone who won't rip me off. Someone who knows how to fix engines better than anyone else. You want me to fix your cars? I want you to manage the fleet, I corrected. Full-time, salary, benefits, and full medical insurance for you and your dependents, including experimental treatments. Leo froze. The coffee cup trembled in his hand. Isabella, it's a job, Leo, I said firmly. A real job. You'd be working for Sterling Global. You'd earn it. Every penny. He stared at me, searching for the catch, searching for the charity. But there wasn't any. I needed a mechanic. He needed a lifeline. It was business, or at least that's what I told myself. Manage the fleet, he repeated. Full medical. Take it or leave it, I said, channeling my boardroom voice. But I warn you, the 1965 Aston Martin has a temperamental clutch. Leo looked down at his coffee, then back at me. His eyes were shining. I can fix a temperamental clutch, he whispered. Then do we have a deal? He stood up. He walked over to me and held out his hand. Deal, he said. I shook it. But this time, instead of pulling away, he held on for a second longer. Thank you, he said. Not for the money, for the dignity. Don't thank me yet, I smiled. Wait until you see the Aston Martin. We walked back to Maya's room together. She was sitting up in the massive bed, eating green jello and watching cartoons on a TV the size of a movie screen. Daddy, she cheered. Sparkly lady. Hi, Maya, I said, sitting on the edge of the bed. Feeling better? Much better. The doctor said my soldiers are winning the war. That's good news. Daddy says you're his boss now, she said suspiciously. Does that mean you get to tell him what to do? Only about cars, I promised. And maybe about ties. We need to get him a better tie. Maya giggled. Leo laughed. And in that sunlit hospital room, surrounded by monitors and wires, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. I felt like I was home. But of course, nothing is ever that simple. The bubble of the hospital couldn't last forever. Outside those walls, the real world was waiting. My mother was waiting. The press was waiting. And they had questions that I wasn't sure I was ready to answer. The bubble popped the moment we stepped out of the hospital. Doors. I expected fresh air. What I got was a wall of flashbulbs blinding enough to rival a supernova. Ms. Sterling! Ms. Sterling! Is it true you left your own gala for a mystery lover? Who is the man in the tuxedo? Is the Sterling Foundation in financial trouble? The press vultures were swarming. Marcus had tried to contain the leak, but a billion-dollar CEO fleeing her own charity event in a Maybach with an unknown man was blood in the water. Leo froze beside me. He was wearing jeans and a t-shirt provided by the hospital staff now, carrying a sleeping Maya in his arms. He looked terrified, shrinking back as the cameras clicked furiously. My instinct was to push him behind me, to shield him with my body and my influence. But I realized that would only make him look weak. And Leo Davis was many things, but he wasn't weak. Keep walking, I murmured, putting a hand on the small of his back, a gesture that was professional, yet possessive enough to make 3 photographers stumble over each other to get the shot. Don't look at them. Look at the car. Marcus was waiting at the curb with the engine running. He opened the back door. Leo slid in, sheltering Maya's head from the chaos. I followed, slamming the door on a reporter asking if I was pregnant. Home, I told Marcus, and then take Mr. Davis to his apartment to pack. To pack? Marcus looked at me in the rearview mirror, his eyebrows climbing into his hairline. He's the new fleet manager, I said, scrolling through emails on my phone to avoid Leo's gaze. He needs to be on site. The garage apartment is empty, isn't it? The carriage house? Marcus choked. Isabella, that's a 2-bedroom guest cottage. It's fully furnished with Italian leather. Perfect. Maya needs space to recover, and I need my cars fixed. Drive. Leo looked at me, stunned. Isabella, I can't live on your estate. It's part of the compensation package. I lied smoothly. On-call mechanics need to be on-call. Besides, do you really want Maya recovering in a 4th-floor walk-up with no AC and neighbors who play reggaeton at 3 a.m.? He opened his mouth to argue, looked down at his sleeping daughter, and closed it. The fight was gone. In its place was a look of profound gratitude that made my chest ache. Thank you, he whispered. Don't thank me. Just fix the Aston Martin. The next week was a blur of logistics. Leo moved into the carriage house. Maya was set up in the spare room with a view of my rose garden, and I went back to being Isabella Sterling, CEO. But something had changed. I found myself rushing home from meetings. I stopped accepting dinner invitations. I told the senator I was busy with restructuring. The truth was, I was busy watching a mechanic work. On Thursday evening, I walked down to the main garage. It was a cavernous space, climate-controlled, smelling of wax and expensive rubber. In the center, under the harsh work lights, Leo was bent over the open hood of my 1965 Aston Martin DB5. He was wearing gray coveralls, grease smudged on his cheek. He looked competent, capable. There is something incredibly attractive about a person who knows exactly what they are doing. How's the patient? I asked, leaning against the doorframe. Leo jumped, banging his head on the hood. Ouch! Sorry, I smiled. I didn't mean to startle you. He rubbed his head, grinning sheepishly. It's okay. I'm just not used to, well, this. He gestured around the garage. This tool chest costs more than my old truck. And this car? Isabella, it's a masterpiece. Who let it get this bad? My previous mechanic said it was a lost cause, said the transmission was shot. He was lazy, Leo said, wiping his hands on a rag. The transmission is fine. The linkage was just misaligned, and the carburetors needed tuning. Listen. He reached in and turned the key. The engine roared to life. Not a sputter, not a cough. A deep, throaty growl that vibrated through the floor. You fixed it, I said, genuinely impressed. I listened to it, he corrected. Cars talk if you know the language. This one was just lonely. It wanted to run. He looked at me then, his eyes intense, kind of like its owner. The air left the room. I said defensively. I run a global corporation. You run away, he said softly. From the gala, from the press, even from your own house. I see the lights on in your office at 2 a.m., Isabella. You don't sleep. I have insomnia. You have ghosts. he countered. We all do. Mine are just louder. He stepped closer. The grease on his face didn't look dirty anymore. It looked like war paint. Maya asked about you today, he said. She wants to know if the sparkly lady wants to see her Lego castle. I hesitated. I have a board meeting prep. Isabella, he said, and he reached out, almost touching my arm but stopping an inch away. You saved her life. You gave us a home. You can take 10 minutes to look at some Legos. I looked at his hand. I wanted him to touch me. I wanted to bridge that inch of space more than I wanted to close the deal with the Japanese investors. Okay, I whispered. 10 minutes. It wasn't 10 minutes. It was 2 hours. We built a castle. We ate pizza out of the box sitting on the floor of the carriage house. I laughed until my stomach hurt. For a few hours, I wasn't the CEO. I was just Isabella. And then, the real world came crashing back in. Saturday morning, I was in the main house drinking coffee when I heard the commotion in the driveway. A black limousine, not one of mine, had pulled up. My stomach dropped. I knew that car. My mother, Victoria Sterling, stepped out, looking like she had just walked off the set of a soap opera about ruthless matriarchs. She was wearing Chanel, diamonds, and a look of absolute disapproval. Mother, I said, meeting her at the front door. You didn't say you were coming. I didn't think I needed an appointment to see my own daughter. She sniffed, brushing past me, into the foyer. Although, judging by the tabloid photos, I might need a ticket. The runaway heiress. Really, Isabella? Leaving your own gala? I had an emergency. You had a breakdown, she corrected. And now I hear rumors. Rumors that you've moved a man onto the estate. A mechanic? She said the word like it was a disease. He's the fleet manager, I said tightly. He's an employee. Is he? She walked to the window overlooking the driveway. Because he looks very comfortable. I looked out. Leo was in the driveway, washing the Rolls Royce. Maya was helping him, spraying water with a small hose, laughing. It was a scene of domestic happiness that clashed violently with my mother's icy presence. He's doing his job, I said. He's playing house, she snapped. And you're letting him. Do you have any idea how this looks? The board is nervous, Isabella. Investors are talking. They think you're being taken advantage of by some fortune hunter with a sob story. Leo is not a fortune hunter. Oh, please. They all are. He sees a lonely, wealthy woman, uses a cute kid as bait, and suddenly he's living in the carriage house driving your cars. She turned to me, her eyes cold. I'm doing this for your own good. I'm firing him. You can't. I'm the chairman of the board, she reminded me. I can fire anyone, especially staff who overstep. She turned and marched toward the door. Mother, stop! I chased after her. She didn't stop. She walked straight out to the driveway, her heels clicking on the pavement. Leo saw her coming. He turned off the hose and wiped his hands, his smile fading. Mrs. Sterling, he said politely. I'm Leo. It's a pleasure to— Pack your things, my mother interrupted, her voice cutting through the morning air like a whip. You're done here. Leo blinked. Excuse me? You heard me. The charity experiment is over. I want you and your child off this property in 1 hour. I'll have security escort you. Maya dropped the hose. She looked scared. Leo stepped in front of her, his posture changing instantly from employee to protector. Isabella hired me, he said, his voice low and steady. I answer to her. Isabella is confused, my mother sneered. She thinks she's rescuing a puppy, but I know a wolf when I see one. You're a grifter, Mr. Davis, and I won't let you drag my family name through the mud. Mother, that is enough, I shouted, reaching them. It is not enough. She spun on me. Look at him, Isabella. Look at this mess. Grease, water, a child running around like she owns the place. This is not who we are. We are Sterlings. We do not associate with the help. Leo went rigid. I saw the shame flash across his face. The same shame from the gala. The belief that he wasn't good enough. That he was dirt. He looked at me. He was waiting. Waiting to see if I would be the CEO or the woman who ate pizza on his floor. Leo, I said. It's okay, Isabella, he said quietly. I understand. We'll go. No, I said. My mother looked at me. Excuse me? I said no. I stepped between my mother and Leo. I stood in my expensive shoes, on my expensive driveway, and I made a choice that had nothing to do with money. Leo isn't going anywhere, I said, my voice shaking but loud. He is the best mechanic I've ever had. He is a better father than you ever were a mother, and he is the only person in this entire family who actually knows the meaning of the word honor. Isabella, My mother gasped. You are choosing him? Over your reputation? Over me? I'm choosing me, Mother, I said. For the first time in my life, I'm choosing what I want, and I want him to stay. I turned to Leo. You're not fired. In fact, I'm giving you a raise. Hazard pay for dealing with my family. Leo looked at me. The shame in his eyes vanished, replaced by something that made my knees weak. A look of awe, of adoration. Isabella, my mother hissed, if you do this, I will call an emergency board meeting. I will challenge your leadership. Do it, I challenged her. Call them. I'll show them the numbers. Since Leo took over the fleet, maintenance costs are down 40%. Efficiency is up. He's an asset. You're a liability. My mother stared at me, open-mouthed. She had never been spoken to like that. Not by me. Not by anyone. She turned around, got into her limousine, and slammed the door. Drive! She screamed at her driver. The car peeled away. Silence returned to the driveway. Just the sound of water, dripping from the hose. I let out a breath and turned to Leo. I'm sorry. She's a lot. Leo didn't speak. He walked over to me, ignoring the water, ignoring the grease, ignoring the gap between our tax brackets. He framed my face with his hand. You defended me, he whispered. You're my fleet manager, I said, trying to joke, but my voice failed. Isabella, he said, to hell with the job. And then he kissed me. It wasn't a polite, gala-appropriate kiss. It was messy. It was desperate. It tasted like coffee and rain and pent-up longing. I wrapped my arms around his neck, pulling him closer, ruining my silk blouse against his wet coveralls, and I didn't care. Ew! A small voice squealed. We broke apart, breathless. Maya was covering her eyes, peeking through her fingers. Daddy is kissing the boss, she giggled. Leo laughed, resting his forehead against mine. Yeah, Peanut. Daddy is definitely kissing the boss. Does this mean we can stay? She asked. I looked at Leo. I looked at the man who had seen me when I was invisible in my own spotlight. Yeah, I said. You're staying, forever, if I have anything to say about it. But as happy as the moment was, I knew my mother wasn't bluffing. The board meeting was coming, the sharks were circling, and I had just declared war on the establishment. I had the guy, now I had to keep the empire. The boardroom of Sterling Global was designed to intimidate. It was a glass cage suspended 50 stories above Manhattan, with a table, made of polished mahogany that cost more than my first apartment. 12 leather chairs surrounded it. 12 pairs of eyes were waiting for me, and at the head of the table sat my mother. It was 9 a.m. on Monday morning. The emergency meeting had been called. The agenda: leadership review regarding the CEO's conduct. I stood outside the double doors, my hand hovering over the handle. I was wearing my armor, a white Alexander McQueen suit, stilettos sharp enough to kill a man, and a diamond necklace that felt like a noose. My hands were shaking, just a little, but enough to annoy me. Hey! A warm hand covered mine. Leo was standing there. He wasn't allowed in the meeting. My mother had made sure of that. Security was tighter than the Pentagon, but he had walked me to the door. He was wearing a new suit I had bought him, not a rental. This one fit him like a glove, emphasizing the broad shoulders that had carried so much weight. You're shaking, he whispered. I'm terrified. I admitted, looking at him. This is my life, Leo. This company, it's the only thing I've ever been good at. If they take it away, they can't take away who you are, he said firmly. You're Isabella Sterling. You fix things. You fixed me. You fixed Maya. Now go in there and fix them. What if I can't? Then we go build Legos. He smiled, that lopsided grin that melted my icy heart. And I teach you how to change a tire. It's a useful skill. I laughed, a short breath of air. I love you. I know. He kissed my knuckles. Go get 'em, boss. I took a deep breath, straightened my spine, and pushed open the doors. The conversation inside died instantly. 12 heads turned. My mother didn't turn. She just stared straight ahead at the empty chair at the opposite end of the table. You're late, she said. I'm precisely on time, I replied, checking my watch. You started early. Typical. I walked to my chair and sat down. I didn't open a folder. I didn't pull out a laptop. I just folded my hands on the table and looked at them. Let's get this over with, I said. My mother stood up. She looked impeccable, as always, but there was a tightness around her eyes I hadn't seen before. Desperation. We are here, she began, her voice projecting to the back of the room, because the CEO has demonstrated a catastrophic lapse in judgment. Last week, Isabella abandoned a key fundraising gala, an event crucial to our brand image, to joyride with a member of the temporary staff. She pressed a button on a remote. A screen descended. A photo appeared. It was the paparazzi shot of me and Leo leaving the hospital, looking disheveled and exhausted. This man, she pointed a laser at Leo's face, is a mechanic. He has no degree, no pedigree. He was hired to fix cars, and within 48 hours, he had moved on to the Sterling estate. He is currently living in the carriage house on company property, while drawing a salary that Isabella authorized personally. Murmurs rippled through the board. One of the older members, George, cleared his throat. Isabella, he said gravely, is this true? Is he living on the estate? Yes, I said. And did you authorize his salary? Yes. And are you involved with him romantically? My mother smirked. This was the kill shot. The moment I would be forced to admit I was compromised. I looked at George. I looked at the photo of Leo, tired, worried, holding his sick daughter. I looked at my mother, who saw people as assets or liabilities, and nothing in between. Yes, I said clearly. I am in love with him. The room exploded. Order! My mother shouted, slamming her hand on the table. You see? She admits it. She is compromising the integrity of this company for a fling. She is unstable. She is being manipulated. I move for a vote of no confidence. We need to remove her as CEO immediately before she turns Sterling Global into a laughingstock. Are you finished? I asked quietly. My mother glared at me. I am finished when you are gone. Good. I stood up. Because now it's my turn. I didn't use the remote. I didn't use slides. I walked around the table, making eye contact with every single member. My mother calls this a lapse in judgment, I said. She calls it a scandal. But let's look at the numbers, shall we? Because unlike my mother, I run a business, not a social club. I stopped behind George's chair. Since the gala incident, as you call it, donations to the Sterling Foundation have increased by 300%. Silent. My mother blinked. 300%, I repeated. Why? Because the story didn't play as a scandal. It played as a fairy tale. The ice queen melting. The billionaire saving a sick child. The public loves it. Our social media engagement is at an all-time high. We are trending on Twitter, TikTok, and platforms I didn't even know existed. For the first time in 10 years, Sterling Global looks human. I walked to the next chair. And as for Mr. Davis, I continued, my voice hardening. My mother calls him a mechanic. I call him the fleet manager. And since he took over that department 5 days ago, he has identified $300,000 in wasteful spending from our previous contracts. He found vendors who were overcharging us. He fixed the Aston Martin that you, mother, wanted to sell for scrap because you didn't know how to maintain it. I leaned on the table, looking directly at my mother. He is an asset, I said. He is efficient. He is honest. And he works harder than anyone in this room, including me. He is a gold digger! My mother shrieked, losing her composure. He is using you. He tried to refuse the job, I said softly. He tried to refuse the hospital room. He tried to pay me back with money he didn't have. Does that sound like a gold digger to you, George? Or does it sound like a man with integrity? George looked thoughtful. He refused the money? He has more honor in his grease-stained pinky finger than this entire board has in its collective bank accounts, I said. I took a deep breath. So, here is the choice, I said. You can vote with my mother. You can fire me. You can go back to being a cold, faceless corporation that throws parties for tax write-offs. Or, I looked at the door where Leo was waiting. Or you can keep me, and we can build a company that actually stands for something. A company that invests in people, not just profits. A company that isn't afraid to get its hands dirty. I sat back. Down. Vote, I said. My mother stared at me with pure hatred. All in favor of removing Isabella Sterling? She raised her hand. She waited. One other hand went up. Her personal lawyer. 2 hands. George looked at me. He looked at my mother. Then he slowly folded his hands on the table. I vote to retain the CEO, he said. Me too, said the woman next to him. Retain, retain, retain. One by one, the voices chimed in. My mother's face went from pale to red to a terrifying shade of purple. You are all fools, she screamed, standing up. She will ruin us. Actually, Victoria, George said calmly, I think she just saved us. The stock is up 4 points since this morning. The market likes the human angle. My mother looked around the room. She realized for the first time in 40 years she was powerless. She grabbed her purse. She didn't look at me. She marched to the door, flung it open, and almost collided with Leo, who was pacing in the hallway. She stopped. She looked him, up and down. You won't last, she hissed at him. People like you never do. Leo didn't flinch. He didn't look down. He looked her right in the eye. "With all due respect, Mrs. Sterling," he said calmly, "I fix things that are broken, and I think I'm exactly where I need to be." She stormed off. I let out a breath that felt like it had been trapped in my chest for a decade. The board members were standing up, shaking my hand, congratulating me on the bold PR strategy. I let them think it was a strategy. It was easier than explaining it was love. I walked out of the boardroom. Leo was waiting. "Well?" he asked, searching my face. "I'm still the CEO," I said. He grinned. "And the fleet manager? His job is secure, although I might need him for some overtime." Leo laughed and pulled me into a hug right there in the hallway of the 51st floor. I buried my face in his neck, smelling the soap and the faint scent of motor oil that I had come to love. "Let's go home," I whispered. "To the penthouse?" "No," I said, pulling back and looking at him. "To the carriage house. Maya is waiting, and I promised to help her build a dragon for the castle." We walked to the elevator, hand in hand. The next few years weren't perfect. My mother sued me twice. The press eventually found other scandals. The Aston Martin broke down again. Leo fixed it. But every night, I came home to a small house on my big estate. I ate dinner with a mechanic and a future astronaut. I learned how to change a tire. I learned that money is just fuel. It doesn't matter how much you have if you don't know where you're going. And I learned that sometimes the most valuable thing you can do at a billion-dollar gala is leave. One evening, about a year later, I was sitting on the porch of the carriage house, watching Maya chase fireflies in the garden. Leo came out with 2 beers, sitting beside me on the swing. "You look happy," he said. "I am," I admitted. "It's weird. I have less control than I used to, but I feel lighter." "That's because you're not carrying it alone anymore," he said, putting an arm around me. I leaned into him. "You know, that night at the gala, when the lady in the red dress spilled her wine?" "Yeah, I never told you," I smiled. "I bought the company that makes her husband's hair plugs, and I raised the price." Leo burst out laughing, that deep, rich sound that vibrated through my bones. "You are terrifying, Isabella." "I know." I kissed his cheek. "But you're terrifying." "Yeah," he said, pulling me close. "You are." And as the sun set over the empire I ruled and the family I built, I knew I was the richest woman in the world. Not because of the bank account, but because I finally had something I was afraid to lose.